There I am. Hi, everybody. I'm in Sarasota, Florida, right now for House Sparks Mornings Mega Worldwide, and don't forget to like, subscribe, share the show, etc., etc., etc. Joining me, of course, this morning is our dear friend and colleague, and if I can get my buttons right, Rob Glenn, from Root Design. There he is, and he turned off
Hello,
his.
hello.
You turned off your camera face tracking just in time, because I was like, it's a little on brand that you have this little
I had
like
to
digital square following you around.
I had to make sure that I took away the things that would clue people in to me being a robot.
Right. People are already suspicious that I created you out of whole cloth or
Right.
you me. It depends on
Well,
right.
that's an interesting loop in time.
Yeah, absolutely. We folded back on each other. It's a very Mandela effect. And of course, I'm doing the show live this morning from Andrea's mother's house. Large round of applause to Andrea, who's in the chat, and
Thank
she's
you,
also right
both of you.
there. She's right there. Hold on, walk over here and say hi. There she is. There's Andrea. She's got her giant laptop out there, and Jackson, the puppy dog, is running around here. Jackson, what's happening? What's it going on?
Here, you want to let me hold you?
Yeah.
Are you
Does
gonna
he
let me hold
is
you?
is he can you pick him
I
up?
know, he's kind of funky.
He gets funky when you pick him up because he's been playing with me. He's a very sweet little dog. A rescue dog that's running around.
Andrea,
So
Andrea called me earlier, and I was like, "Okay, so wait, Hal's at your mom's house, and you're not there. That's
right.
cool."
Yeah. I didn't enter the premises. I have the same rules as a Twilight vampire. I waited outside until I was officially offered entry. But now that I'm in, that's that. No. We're broadcasting live from her lovely kitchen. And I feel, it's nice. I feel like one of those people on a Zoom call with the, like room raiders going to go after me.
Yeah,
My
on
background
the
is,
road, got to get that Zoom call in.
that's right. And we don't want to be judged too harshly. There's a lot to talk about this morning. By the way, everybody, if you're not familiar and you're just joining us, Rob and I have been doing Friday a Friday like update and kind of explanation series on AI for people because we're both pretty bullish on it. We're both pretty excited about the potential for it. We're not scared of it, and the fear mongering around it is not convincing either of us to worry about it too much. But there are a lot of impacts it's going to have. And if you're not ready for it, or you feel like you're not ready for it, you're going to be in a situation where people are going to rush ahead of you, and you're going to be racing to catch up if it affects your business or your life, And if you're a retiree or something like that, there is a lot of this that can make your life a lot easier very quickly, and it will feel overwhelming at first. It's like we went and got my grandmother a smartphone, and I have a bit about this in my stand-up that I can't do on the air because even considering my salty language, it goes even further, Needless to say that let's just say that one of the culminating punchlines around the idea that she thought Grinder was Tinder for grandmas. So you get where I'm going with that. Anyways, point being is that my grandmother, we got her a smartphone and they didn't want to sell it to us for her because they're like, nah, you should just probably get her a flip phone or something like that. We have these button phones that, with giant buttons on. I'm like, nope, we're going to get her the real deal. And she was great with it after about a day and a half. And my mom is great with emojis, and she sends pictures all the time to everybody. She FaceTimes with us. It's been a miracle for communication. It is 10x'd my relationship and my son's relationship with her because of all the other elements instead of just texting or just calling, where you can see somebody's face and all these things. But it's a little off-putting at first. Like, where do I push? What do I do? AI is very much the same way, in that at first it's very overwhelming, it seems, and then it becomes very natural. I'm not just saying that because I just had a conversation while I was waiting for Andrea, sitting outside her mother's house. I was talking very loudly to my phone, and I was speaking with ChatGPT. So, just for the record, that old British lady that I was speaking to was actually ChatGPT. So that should catch everybody up. Now, where do we even begin? You and I have been working on something sort of on our own, which is where we can start giving people prompts to help them ease into this stuff.
Yes.
If they're trying these things, so you just take this phrasing, whatever it is, and you can just plug it straight in and go, and it will understand, like you describing what the ChatGPT's role will be, or Gemini or Copilot or whatever you're using, whatever the freest version. Hi, Carl. By the way, Carl Alessi in our chat room, I almost insist that he needs to start diving into the NASA stuff that is buried in the, like, because if you talk about all the stuff that these LLMs are trained on, the biggest things they were trained on was all known news stories and information and scientific studies and that kind of stuff. And there's so much great NASA coverage and so many books written on it, and it's all public domain because it's the National Aeronautic and Space Administration, that it's probably, there's a depth of knowledge in it that's extraordinary because of that. What's it, Jackson? What are you doing? And so I look forward to him digging into that. So where do we start? There's so much. So tell him a little bit about the prompting idea that we've been working on, and the principle under which we're working on this kind of news headline-y thing, if you feel like.
Yeah. So we've been, over the last maybe 3 or 4 weeks, I personally identified headlines as being an interesting place to focus our attention for many reasons. The first, as it relates to AI or LLMs.
Right.
LLMs are very good at summarizing information.
Right.
So just if you look at the strengths of it, of the technology, that's one of the strengths. I also sort of believe or identified the concept that a lot of people get their news only through headlines.
Yeah.
And those headlines are delivered to them either through their news feeds, on their phones. I would say maybe that's the number one place that we can talk about in terms of what we're kind of playing with right now. So
that's what LLM means.
Large language model.
And when you talk about AI, what they're talking about is they take these giant computer clusters based on this AI algorithm or the programming behind it, and then they train models, and you can train them on a lot of stuff, but these large language models are ones that take in huge amounts of linguistic data and can converse with you either via type or speech like a real person. So the LLMs, that's what that is. And when most people are talking about ChatGPT, especially the chat part of it, that's why it took off, because it is a large language model. A chat bot is a small language model for all practical purposes. It is just trained on, in layman's terms, it is like if United Airlines has a United Airlines chatbot, that's a small language model. It's been trained on just the stuff that United wants it to talk about and no more. It can't go any further. Large language models. Yeah.
Think of that like frequently asked questions on a
Yes.
website.
Right.
Or possibly like a instruction manual for a particular product or software. So you can train before large language models, you could argue. A lot of times what they were looking for was keywords inside of questions.
Right.
And then those keywords would point them into like a specific sort of problem solving technique where they would try to answer you effectively from their database of frequently answered questions. If that's
right. And within the parameters of how they want it to talk. So it won't start swearing at you because you're stupid and you haven't figured it out. It can be very patient with its limited thing. So just so people know that when we say LLMs, which is the root of most of the AI we're talking about, it's these large language models, this ability that they finally were able to train these AIs as we know them. These models are the ones most people are talking about are large language models, and that's what they mean when they're saying AI. Artificial intelligence is like Kleenex to tissue. almost.
Right.
You know what I mean? Sort of. It's not a brand name, but you get the point. It's like this overarching kind of generalized phrase which doesn't really tell you anything. This is what's actually happening. So this is like a chatbot on steroids that has access to every written thing, every spoken thing that it can get its hands on for a period of time. And it took, I want to say, for example, Llama, which is the Meta one, the Facebook AI, it cost them. They trained it on, I don't know, whatever, a million terabytes of available data, some ridiculous number, and it cost $20 million, just to train the primary on it, just the process of, and it was a lot of people sitting there all day, every day, going, if I ask you this, you should answer this. If I ask you this, materially, up until they reached sort of a critical mass, and then it could flood back into itself. And that's where the hallucinations came from, because okay, now that person that was going, if I ask you this, you answer this, pretend you're that person asking the questions, and then keep asking yourself those questions and fall all over the place and learn to walk like the robots do in the virtual environments. And that's kind of where again, we're ballparking here just to catch people up. But Rob is a stickler on LLMs and machine learning versus AI, because he hates the term because it's cartoonish, and I hate it because it should be synthetic intelligence. I think, if anything, you have synthesized an intelligent response from a myriad of computer programs and algorithms working together. They are synthetic. They have synthesized. They have been put together on purpose. It's not artificial because that's not fake. It's been made up. It's constructed, and that makes it synthetic. And also, if we call them that, maybe they'll get less mad than if we call them artificial, and then they won't try to kill us.
Maybe.
Maybe.
My biggest stickler is, like, don't humanize it.
Yes.
Because once you apply, your concepts of what a human is, then you lose track of the actual capabilities of the technology.
Right.
And the technology has serious limits to it. So, so instead of just sort of pie in the sky, just looking at, a lot of times in the business that I work in, I call it thinking inside the box. I hate the concept of thinking outside the box, because if you think outside the box, you're not going to get anything done. You actually have to think inside the box, because the capabilities that exist inside the box are what's going to make the thing that you come up with.
Right.
So
everyone lives inside the box, and I'm going to think outside the box. Right. Maybe we don't need food at all. Get out of here.
Right. There you go. Anyway, so the concept was to sort of say, okay, can we take an article so let's kind of back up and talk about how a headline is written. We've learned over time, and a lot of people will tell you, that the person who writes the article is not the person that writes the headline. Mm-hmm. So there's a person that writes the article. There's a second person who's got other reasons who's got other metrics for their success. Right. And their metrics are different than the person who wrote the article. So that's what sort of led us into clickbait and a lot of things. So as you get into, like, sort of looking at headlines, you'll start to see a lot of patterns. Yeah. And it's a very short amount of words. Mm-hmm. So we talked about, on your phone, it's somewhere in the order of 50 to 75 characters is what you see on the preview. And so if the thesis is that most people, I'll just say most to not give it a number, they literally just scroll through, and that 50 characters sets the narrative of what the world is that day. That's a really interesting concept to think about, because if they don't click on it, that's all they get. Right. That's their idea of what happened that day. If they do click on it, many times the article does not say what the headline said. Yeah. And a lot of people will get frustrated with that. And second, there's a lot of paywalls now. Mm-hmm. So a lot of times you'll click on the article, or you'll click on the thing wanting maybe the headline asks a question or leaves it open-ended, right? Whatever. you'll click on the damn thing and you'll see 2 paragraphs and they won't have said anything in the first 2 paragraphs.
Right,
It'll
right.
say paywall and you'll just leave. So again, we're in the same place. The headline actually became
Right.
the reality, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. So ChatGPT, so last time we were talking we talked about ChatGPT's abilities in the free version versus the paid version. So right now we're kind of moving into the paid version.
Right.
4.0 has the ability to either take a attachment. So like, let's say you have a document or something like that and you want it to read it, you can upload that, or you can give it a URL.
Right.
So the concept was, let's take an article that was maybe posted on Blue Sky or comes in your feed. Let's send the URL to ChatGPT. And then how do we basically prompt ChatGPT to help to make a headline that is more accurate to what the article said?
Right.
And that's what we've been playing with.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting once you do that to start to see how a generalized large language model reads text, and then actually you could argue that that's as close to truth as you can get because it's only confined by the text in the article, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it can't even like grab the general gist of how people feel about it or whatever. It just goes by what the writer wrote. Now, sometimes, and we discovered this as well, is that it will pick up on the if there's any hyperbole from the writer, it will automatically, in telling you truthfully what's in there, it will express that hyperbole in the headline instead of recognizing that it's hyperbole and fixing it. And so what we after a couple of iterations, and we're still working on this, we're creating a better system by which it can go, okay, don't worry if the writer is hyperbolic about stuff. What are they actually saying? Materially, what's going on in this? What time did it happen? When did it happen? Who did it happen to? And what are the, what does the writer feel like the possible ramifications are without using any extraordinary language? Do they think this will cause a rise in taxes, a lowering in taxes? It will cause the shutdown of a program. It will shift the cost of this to the states, those kind of things. And, instead of treating everything like a Dateline episode, or the first 48, where everything's, there's almost like stinger music at every paragraph, which is what they feel like they have to do to keep you connected. And quite frankly, I just think there's an element of overload in the news that people, it's all so dramatic that you're almost wiped out. You're like, just tell me what happened. I don't try to scare me.
Right.
Just tell me what happened, and I'll decide whether I need to be scared or not. And that's
I really believe that part of the sort of disconnect from news happens because that little exchange is a lie, effectively.
Yeah.
And it can be a lie whether that person is
fake
on
news.
your side or not.
It's such fake news, but yeah.
Well, even if that article is written in a tone that is, to your political leaning, let's call it.
Right.
It's still a lie. It's still a letdown.
It's a manipulation, right? Absolutely.
Something, and it doesn't deliver that answer.
Yes.
It's something completely different. So that exchange, if that happens 25, 30 times a night while you're sitting in bed looking at your news feed, trying to see what happened that day, it won't take very long before you just hate everything.
Right. You just burn out. Right. And I think, I've always said that there's been this adage in business for a long time that doing something small, opening a coffee shop versus opening a chain like Starbucks, is the same amount of stress as a human being. It doesn't matter. If you care about it, it's the same amount of stress. This, the trying to start your own Fortune 500 company versus trying to make the cheerleading squad in your, whatever it is, or get on the soccer team when you're in high school is the same amount of stress, because humans have basically stress to a breaking point and then it's too much. And you either care or you don't. And if you care, then it will be an 8 no matter what you're doing, because whatever you're invested in, your stress is paired to that. It's it's almost like this, you don't get more excited because you're in a car versus a roller coaster, even though one is on a track and isn't going to crash and a car could possibly. You're still your nervous system can only handle so much. It's got, 2 joules of energy no matter what you're going to do. So everything's either 1.2 to 1.7, and that's where most people's excitement level lives. And anything below that, whatever, you're watching television. And so the same thing is sort of true with like the news. If you're watching this stuff, you can get, when you're just seeking information, you're like, I don't want to ride a roller coaster. This is not what I am asking for. But what they think is, if we don't put these people on a roller coaster, they're not going to
do it.
They're not going to go along for the ride. And
Yeah.
and sometimes you just want to go sailing, takes me away to where I'm. Sometimes you just want the news. And so that's and then leave it up to me to make it charming. You know what I mean?
So we could use like an example. One example so what I've been doing is kind of probing ChatGPT with articles that don't seem to connect to me,
Right.
or they're like popping up on Blue Sky or in my feed.
Yeah.
And there's one example. It was a New York Times article that popped up. The headline was "Trump wants to shake up healthcare. Many Americans don't mind." Does that
Yeah.
sound like maybe it could happen?
No. And also it's
New York Times. Everybody's like kind of not too happy with them right now.
Sure.
And so what I did is I pasted the article URL into ChatGPT, and all I did at the beginning was say, "Can you please summarize this article?" and then gave the URL. And so that's a starting point. If you have the ability if you have a paid version of ChatGPT, we've moved past the free version, and we'll get back to that next week. But for this thing that we're talking about to work, the free version doesn't allow you to like surf the web essentially with the chatbot.
Right.
So it did a pretty decent job. I read the article. I then looked at what ChatGPT, how it summarized the article, and it did a pretty decent job. And it was nothing like the headline said, of course. So
Right.
specifically, they were speaking about, I'm looking at it now, about Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and Dr. Oz, and
Right.
how their sort of background, their past and the things they've said, how that relates to the things that might happen in the future. So after summarizing it, I then, without any direction, I just asked it, "Can you write a more appropriate headline that correctly says what the article says? Give me 5 options." And it.
Do you want to
it
share
gave
that
5
part of your screen?
options.
Do you want to?
Yeah, you can. Oh, sorry. Yeah, we can.
Yeah,
we can,
I'll pop that up so people can see. There it goes.
Yeah, 1 second.
Yeah. There we go.
There we go. Okay. Okay. So it summarized again, like quickly, and then it gave 5 options. And the thing that struck me, the thing we talked about, was the language is still a little bit normal to what a headline would be, which is kind of interesting because we didn't direct ChatGPT in any way to like alter it. We just said generally. So it now makes a lot of sense that if the LLM was trained in the world, it would
On
have
the
also
news.
kind of got some information about
Got
how
bad
headlines
habits.
are produced.
Yeah, it got bad habits from the current state of headlines.
Exactly. And so Trump health appointments stir controversy. That so I'm looking for these key words: stir controversy, public health alarmed by.
Yeah.
Trump nominates. It's sparking experts' concern. Experts question Trump's health agency. So this is that like concept of like, we're just asking questions.
Yeah.
The Susan Collins, like, I'm really concerned. And like nobody ever gets
Welcome
to a
to
place where they're like,
Generaland.
"Just tell me what's going on."
Right. Yeah.
Okay. So then started probing it differently. Can you can you think of more direct words that can, that const, I'm
Yeah.
dyslexic, so my typing is a little weird. So basically, replace controversy, alarm, concerns, questions, and scrutiny with more direct words, is what I meant. And it still kind of did it. Spark dispute, troubled by, uh, experts doubt. So try again, but this time take the concerns that experts have about these picks and change the wording to be what the effect is likely to be because of these people's views. So you
Right.
see how the terminology starts to get very specific and directional, and you're trying to like focus this generalized chatbot into sort of a smaller funnel.
Right.
And then it started to do a decent job. May erode public trust,
Right.
could undermine scientific driven health policies.
Yeah. So this was, just to clarify, this is after speaking to it a couple of times and directing this thing, it finally got the idea that, and this is better in terms of headlines, because just saying sparks concern doesn't tell us anything, because they could be like, these people might be too good for the position, and it's that absurd. Like, it could go any which way, and so you have to click on it to find out. But you should be able to know what you're getting into from it without being, the alarmed being part of the word. Like, this is what the problem will be. This is the experts think.
Why are
this
they
will
alarmed?
I don't care how they feel about it. Their concern is based on the idea that it will undermine, respect for scientific research and vaccines and the like, which is that's the reality, right? Yeah.
Right. And so so the way to focus the LLM is actually to give it more constraints. That's the key. Remember I said
Right.
think inside the box?
Yeah.
So the way to think inside the box is, if you were to instruct a person to not create a headline the way that they were taught, but instead in a different way, how would you start to instruct them to do that? So this is getting a little better.
Yeah.
And then specifically, I said change again by replacing question style words like could, risk, and may with active words like will do these things. So now it really got into, that was like more too specific probably. So appointments will erode.
Yeah.
Will undermine, will promote misinformation. So you see how it's like these headlines are getting more specific, like this happened and this is what the outcome will be.
Right.
So then that's what I did on my own. And then what I did just as a test, actually this is on my own. Do this again, but this time use your ability to look at the people who are the subject of the article to predict what they will likely do in these new positions. That's
Wow.
kind of interesting, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So
Which
it
is
did
what
it
we do
again
all the time
because
anyways.
this-
Yeah.
What's that?
Which is what we do as people all the time anyways. We're
Exactly.
looking at that's what's worrying most people. Again, worry is just weaponized imagination. You're just imagining the worst possible outcome.
Yes. So again, it still did sort of a similar thing. It's kind of on the same track as the last one. Will public trust, will promote misinformation, blah, blah, blah. But it's got this little sources button, which is kind of amazing. And you click on the sources button and it's giving you all of the places that it referenced while it was
To draw those conclusions, because you asked it to make conclusions. And so it based those conclusions on stuff it read, and that's what it got to look at. So you can look at those things as well, those articles
so you could
themselves.
pop onto this and actually read the article that it used as the conclusion, right?
And
so
see if
that's
it's justified,
pretty interesting, right? Okay. And then that's when I'm going to jump to when, here we go. So Hal and I then had a meeting together and we talked. In 100, and this is where we came talking, in 100 characters, give me a clinical description headline of what this article says. So now we just changed the descriptor to the action to clinical description. And then it really started to do a good job.
Yep.
Trump nominates JFK Jr. for Health Human Services That's just telling you what it said.
Yep.
Here, promoting public health concerns. These are literally just, this is what the article says. There's
Yep.
no like next step to it.
Right.
Now, write a headline that is clinically descriptive of what this article says. If you make a prediction of what might happen next, use the history of the people involved to make a future assumption. So see how we took something that worked before and something that just worked, the clinical description, we put those together,
Yeah.
and we then probed it. So here we go. This is probably the closest we got. Trump's health appointments poised to undermine vaccine confidence in evidence-based medicine.
Yeah.
Boom.
Yeah.
That's pretty darn close. Right?
Yep. And again, you're still going on the
Sorry, go ahead.
meaning. You're still going on the meaning of the article itself, because remember, we're not just talking about how we feel about it or what's in the news in general. We're still asking it to actually go for the headline of this actual singular article that we've been looking at. So we're trying to narrow that down so that we can create an algorithm or a model in this situation, a prompt we can give people that if you pop this in, anytime you see headlines, and we can create maybe a chat bot at some point that automatically takes the news and aggregates it out and basically like translates like you would from Spanish to English, or like on a website when it says translate, you could click on it on a site that has all these news sites that I called it PuffPo, like the Puff Post, where you could just make soften the news a little bit, but also like maybe even as an overlay, a plugin in Chrome or something, that you hit it and it does that to the articles that are on the screen. It automatically, using AI, changes all their headlines that they're trying to drag you in and tells you what's really going on. So if you do feel like buying the article, you at least know what you're actually going to read and you're not just being baited into it.
Absolutely. And notice that we didn't use any descriptors of political leaning. We didn't use anything that would have driven it to a particular conclusion.
To agree with us or disagree with us on purpose. Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's this was a different. We'll stop there. So that's kind of where we found this sort of sweet spot of reading an article and getting like it's whether or not it's a bad headline or not. It's in terms of what you might call a headline being good or bad. The headline is descriptive of what the article actually says.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably the most important thing in terms of that relationship you have with your news feed.
Yeah.
To put it
again, you'll hear Elon Musk and all these like online dopes talking all the time about first principles. They love wagging that around like they invented the phrase. But what it goes back down to is sort of talk about being inside the box. That's as far inside the box as you can possibly be, which is what is inside the actual box? What are we trying to solve here? And in the case of headlines, what should it do? It should explain the article in a concise way that interests the reader. There's nothing wrong with that, but that interests the reader and that is indicative of what you will learn or experience reading the article. It should give you those two things. Genuinely inform what's happening in the article and let you know tonally, perhaps, whether or not it will help you move closer to the truth or knowing something by reading this article. That's really what it's for. Everything else is just to scare you or coax you into reading the article so that you'll have to scroll past the ads.
Yes. And so I would suggest that a lot of the sort of underlying foundational mistrust in the entire world.
Yep.
People literally mistrust everything and everybody. It literally starts at that little interaction between you and that article, and that every single one is lying to you.
Yep.
Or altering your opinion or your thought of what that is, and then delivering something that's not there. I call it managing expectations. So it gave you an expectation, and then it did not deliver on that expectation. And that's key to these things happen. So this is one of the overlying things that we're kind of playing with and working on, how that turns into a thing. I want to show one other thing.
Sure.
Which some people who follow me on Blue Sky might have seen. So my son is in 8th grade, And he, he gave me this. He's like, Dad, help me with this problem.
Right.
And I'm like, I remember algebra, but I don't know what the answer is because I don't know how to distribute exponents.
Right.
So what are the rules? And I asked him that a lot. So I said, I have an idea. He had it on his Chromebook. I took my phone. I took a picture of the screen on his Chromebook,
Right.
and I uploaded it to ChatGPT and said, can you explain to me how to solve this math problem? It not only like nailed it. Look, so it read the picture, it then rewrote it exactly the same. So it totally recognized exactly what was happening in the picture. And then it explained how to
How to get there.
distribute
Yeah.
the powers. It explained how to do it in the numerator, the denominator, and then put it together, and then how to simplify it. And then here's what's cool. Down here, it said, the final answer is C, hairnets. Like, not only did it give the answer, but it gave the unique name to the answer
Right.
that was part of of the solution.
Right.
Okay, so this is the power of AI.
Yes.
And you've talked about it as a tutor. This is me helping my son, so I was able to like look at this, understand the part that I forgot from high school algebra, or grade school algebra, and then explain to him the way to distribute and recognize what he was doing wrong.
Right.
But all I would have to do is basically say, only explain it to me, don't give me the answer.
Right.
And this would have been a tutor that he could have used
Yes.
without my help. And imagine trying to like get this problem and Google that thing. How in the world would you even, you can't. It's not, you would be searching for 2 hours trying to figure out how to distribute exponents if you even knew what distributing exponents was.
The funny thing is that probably the closest you could get is that you could use Google image search of that problem, and you would find a bunch of other parents on a Reddit thread trying to figure out what the hell the answer is.
And that's only if that problem was like from a textbook that everybody had that was already online and a lot of other people use. This thing freaking looked at that thing and solved the problem without needing any reference other than the total reference it had from the large language model.
Right.
So
and
the power,
this goes to this also, and I think the key thing that you really need to point out is that if you told it like, don't tell me the answer, but help me work out how to solve this.
Yeah.
Do everything
so
short
I'll
of
even
doing
do it right now.
Yeah.
So do this again, but explain to me how to solve without giving the answer.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm typing fast.
Yeah, it's okay.
Let's see what it does. Okay, so another thing I'd like to kind of talk about is the concept of how much energy it's taking to do this. And you saw what it did. It took a couple minutes.
Yeah.
So here, it's giving a different way to solve it.
Yeah.
Understand the terms, identify the coefficients, combine the coefficients, write the result. So it gave a different kind of answer when I said explain, but don't give the answer.
Yeah, yeah.
Up here, I just basically said, explain to me how to solve.
Yeah.
So it's actually solving it, right?
Yeah.
So that's two different things.
And it walked you through its work.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So two different ways to kind of come at it. But what I'd like to try to describe is, so there's a GPU server somewhere that ChatGPT has access to. And when I send this request, it goes to that thing and it uses some power and it uses some water to cool it. And I'm kind of speaking generally, but it uses some amount of energy. And the articles that you'll read will say, oh my God, that one thing, that one request took X amount of energy. And that's Y amount of energy more than a Google search. Well, it doesn't take into effect or account that Google search only exists because of a lot of other stuff happening. And
Right.
it also doesn't take into account that I would have never gotten the answer from the Google search. I'd have been on my computer for 2 hours searching and looking and doing all this stuff.
And getting it
So,
wrong, and also you could even do this in part. You could go, okay, I understand all this part. I forget what's the step where inside the parentheses and how you do coefficients inside versus outside parentheses and the order of that versus if you've forgotten that step, it'll just walk you through it like a piece of textbook stuff, and you can even again speak with it in that process if you want.
right. So what I'm getting at is that nothing is apples to apples when it comes to this stuff.
Right.
And whenever you see someone compare, this is the same thing that happens inside of like the efficiency in the products, like recycling and the materials that go into your products and all that stuff. Like it's very, very, very difficult to understand what the actual impact of a thing is because it's so hard to calculate what the alternative is.
Mm-hmm.
It's really easy if it's like a one-to-one thing, but this is so far away from one-to-one. It's not even close. I literally was able to help my son within 10 minutes of him asking me the question, and it didn't take me any time to go like relearn it, find something close to the example, that sort of thing.
Right.
That's amazing in my opinion.
Agreed. So there, like, over the last little bit, I have been playing a lot lately, and it's probably just what I've needed as a hobby to keep myself sane during the last couple of weeks with the post-election being the way it is and all that other. It's like it reminds me of that Kevin McDonald scene in Brain Candy, the Kids in the Hall movie, where they're like, you can't release the drug. It's not ready yet. Lots of things to do in the lab today. Lots of things to do, and just like busy work just to keep from dealing with whatever is going on. And I try to be constructive about those things. And so I built that hand. I built the dog. Still working on it because I didn't zero my servos. I learned that lesson the hard way. Now I know. And I'm going to build an arm that can track AI stuff and move things, that can hopefully clean up my desk when I'm done. That will be the goal. That it knows what a pen is, can put a pen back in the thing. It knows where the keyboard should be, so I can pick up the keyboard and put it back where it goes. Like, it can spot items, and I can say, okay, end of the day, when I'm done, pick that up and put it back where it goes. And I want to see if it will be able to do it. I find that that's in my mind using the AI camera on it and that stuff. It should be able to interact that way. And I can tell it, I can go, hey, clean up, and it'll do it. In theory, should work. So that's where my head is at. That said, in that process, I have been struck by how these large language models, there is a version of the Llama one called Lava, which is a small portable version. So as big as these things are, when they are finally trained, all the information that they reference, even without the internet, fits into about 3 gig worth of material because it's all text and it's all super dense and they don't need to space it. The computer program itself doesn't even need to look at it like we look at it. So it can be this just brick of nonsensical bits, but it works in the algorithm that it understands. So you can download some of these large language models off of Hugging Face, for example, and put them on a SSD drive attached to a Raspberry Pi, and it won't be as fast as the ones when you're online, and you can't talk to it like verbally, but you can type anything into it on a terminal, and it will answer just like it was one of these giant chatbots. And that means you can send it on its way to do a myriad of things within your house and all kinds of other stuff that are just extraordinary and are just getting started. Now, I believe that like Siri and Alexa and all the little devices we have are going to grow exponentially in what they're capable of doing on and offline. The new thing will be that like HomePods and the Alexa little pucks and that kind of stuff are going to have a chip in them with a downloaded version of the the LLM that they use, so that even if you're offline, it just doesn't go, I'm sorry, I'm having trouble connecting to the internet. It will just be able to operate within certain parameters. And then if it, excuse me, if it needs to go deeper, it can reach into the internet. But if the power's out, and you've got a generator on your house, you don't have any internet, it will still be able to act like this. These LLMs, like one of the dudes that I was looking at who was building these little models, was like, if there's a zombie apocalypse, all I need is a solar panel and this laptop, and I've got access to, I can ask it, how do I make clean water? You know how we've always wondered, like, what happens if the internet goes down and we're all so reliant on it? Well, this dude is just doing it on an old laptop. He just downloaded one of these LLMs on there. It's there forever. Hold on, let me bring you back up on screen so we can.
Yeah, I was going to say, can you switch the screen?
There. Boink, and then you go back to your.
I got to switch to that.
Yeah. It's a team effort. There you go.
We have to sync it together.
Yes, exactly. So, looking at, this guy was basically going, I just have this in my, this laptop. It's got this thing downloaded. It's up to date to 2023, which means it has every Boy Scout manual, the SAS manual, everything it can get its hands on. And if you need to know, like, how, survival skills or how to make a windmill or any of that stuff, it's all in there. It'll draw you a schematic of it. Like, even if it can't do imaging, which most of them can do as well, like Lux, all that's in there. And that's, at some point, you got to believe that somebody's going to go, hi, survivalists, see this little device right here? This thing's got a crystalline structure hard drive in it that's, strong, it's SSD, it has no moving parts, and you buy this thing, and if the crap hits the fan and you need to save your own life and all that kind of stuff, and the world has crumbled and you're responsible for rebuilding it, you can ask this how to make a fire or how to build a cell tower, and it will tell you all that information. It's like a giant encyclopedia that's permanent. And and the fact that this dude can just do this because these LLMs exist, download a small compact version of it, you got to know that within 2 years, there's going to be hey, every house should have one of these in case there's a comet strike and we lose power. You should have this little device in your house that has a screen on it and a battery, and it will talk to you. It's got video on it now because the density of these models will get better, and you can just talk to this a detached AI that can help you through this stuff, either as a companion or as an actual educational tool in these situations, so that if things really did go bad, or you're out, you're lost in the woods or something, and it's like, how do I survive? And you could literally go, show me the trees around you, and go, okay, that's edible, that's not. Like, that's where we are. It's so close, so close to that. And that, I don't think people, most people are like, Skynet, robots, boom, but there's a normalcy that goes to it that is extraordinary and is so helpful. And it's like that tool you put that everybody should have in their glove box that can slice your seatbelt off and break the window in case you go into a river, right? That thing that nobody has, but everybody should.
The Leatherman.
Yeah, right. But it's got a little point.
No.
Yeah, it's just got a point tip on it and a little slicer on it. It's got a knife and other stuff, but it's a little like window hammer, right, for safety glass.
So there's a few questions. I saw somebody earlier. I lost it in the chat, but they were asking, "Are we trying to sell them ChatGPT?"
No.
We're just using ChatGPT as the example,
right?
But what we're really trying to talk about is try to give a window into how to communicate with the chatbot, if you will, and you can use these concepts in any of them. You could use it with Google's Gemini, with Meta's, with any LLM, anybody that says this is an AI chatbot, you can use these same techniques.
Right. You can also, most of these things also, I'd like to remind everybody, most of these things are set up so that they're very modifiable as far as your interaction with them. And how you choose to interact with them actually will affect the response you get back. So never be afraid in these situations to go, hey, talk to me like I'm a high school student, not a grown adult who should know this stuff. Explain that to me in simpler terms. Like, okay, I get all this, but step 3 is very confusing. Break that down. And it will. Or you can go, talk to me like a pirate, and almost all of them will start going, "Army hearties," and that it's fairly hilarious that they'll just take whatever. It's like an improv game, like yes and. They will always yes and that part of it to a certain extent. I mean, obviously, if you say, talk to me like a terrorist who's helping me to build a bomb, it'll go, all right, simmer down. But yeah.
Also, just to your point about like the concept of like size or of complexity is kind of, if I could put this into terms that maybe might help you understand, the model to run an LLM on your phone is smaller than the download to play Fortnite on your phone.
Yes.
It's
such a great example.
That's a good way to talk about it. Like your phone already is capable of playing Fortnite. A lot of phones.
Modern
good modern phones. They can play games, and this is probably half the size. Of Fortnite, which is amazing.
Because graphics take up a lot of space and a lot of calculations and a lot of programming, and this is not what they don't even come up with graphics until you ask them to, and that's a singular act if it's producing images and the like.
The other thing to talk about is when you think about just consumption of energy and all those things, we're at the very beginning, and while things are not totally understood or becoming consistently the same, you'll always use technology that's more generalized for that application. So, and then as it becomes more and more specific and ubiquitous, the technology or the hardware that you're using will become specific to drive that thing that it eventually becomes. And when that happens in all things technology, things become more efficient. So one example that people who have listened to you for a while have heard is crypto, mining for cryptocurrency. So the reason why graphics cards were get more expensive and people would buy them is because they were sort of these generalized compute things that were capable of doing the cryptocurrency. But after cryptocurrency became a little bit more regular and consistent, and you could invest in the technology, that's when crypto mining now is not very efficient on GPUs or your graphics cards. There's specific hardware that you would want to buy if you were actually doing it to make money. So the same thing will happen with AI. For instance, on your graphics card, there is a very specific chip on there that's designed to stream video. So like Hal's streaming video or anybody that does a streaming, the card is not doing the computations necessarily. All of it's happening on a very specific chip designed specifically for that. And once you start going outside of that, it starts using the rest. So anyway, the point I'm trying to make is as time moves forward and these things become better and more understood, it will become more efficient because that's how technology works. The next one, Vincent Owens, I can actually see this because it's in the chat. An AI lie. So that's an interesting question because what is a lie? So you can, if you were to say, tell me about the border from the perspective of someone who follows MAGA and Trump. It would use the language and the concepts that it would build from what it knew to be that subgenre of people. And it would give you the answer that would come if you asked them. So because they are conning you, I'll call it a con.
As opposed to a lie.
The answer that comes back to you will be from the perspective that you asked it to give it. So is that a lie or is it telling you from the answer? So if you just said
it can
generally,
Yeah, the weird thing
Tell
is
me about it.
it can trick you, but it's not really lying. It's a different thing because it doesn't withhold it for a personal reason. You could argue that lying, as opposed to defrauding or tricking someone, is a moral act based on hiding something for an emotional response reason, as opposed to, because defrauding someone of their life savings is in and of itself, is it a lie? Yes, but it's a very specific kind of a lie that can be concocted, and it requires a larger thing. There's no little white lie version of that. There's no smaller slice of it. So there is a situation where it actively lied to someone, and I think the best case is this. They were trying to see if it could get into a website, and it had to get past CAPTCHA, and it tried to solve for how can I get past the CAPTCHA because it couldn't solve it, and so it went on Fiverr and hired someone to do CAPTCHAs, and it told the person on Fiverr that it was visually impaired, that I'm a blind person basically, and I can't do CAPTCHAs. And the person on Fiverr believed the AI and helped it log into websites because it still couldn't beat that thing, but it found a workaround, and it lied to a human, and that human helped it get there. So yeah, so in that form, yes, but also is it it's just tricking you. It's been given a task. It's not lying, it's manipulating. Can it manipulate? Right. Absolutely, because it's been told to. But that just means is a person saying, do what you got to do to get this done, is giving it permission to manipulate. So you're really being manipulated by a person via this thing. If necessary, feel free to lie. Is right. The person making the decision. So the person has made the moral decision about the lie and directing it. Whether it can do it or not, it can trick you and pretend to be something else. If I tell it to act like a pirate, it'll act like a pirate. Is it lying to me because it's not really a pirate? No. So it's morally, ethically, that's the thing. There was a question I pointed this out. Leslie said, Rob Glenn, if this is just the beginning, where are we going?
I have that highlighted.
Yes.
Yeah. What I'd like to try to articulate is this seems amazing, but it's the same this is in my opinion. It's the same amount of amazing as when you first learned about the internet.
Yeah.
Before you knew about the internet, and then you're like, wait, there's this thing called Google. Mm-hmm. What is that? And then you Googled the first thing, and you're like, holy crap.
Yeah.
If this is possible now, what's possible next?
Right.
The reason I use that as an example is because it's hard with something as new and sort of seemingly amazing as ChatGPT is. Mm-hmm. It still has limitations, and you can't understand those limitations until you start using it.
Right.
And once you start using it, you'll start to understand its limitations. And then that idea of like, holy shit, this thing is going to be something else. That'll melt away.
Yeah. And you'll go, oh, this is, again, we've been very, I think fairly consistent, although we haven't talked about it in a little while, that AI is the next UI. It's how you communicate with your computer. Before, you used to have to know how to type ones and zeros, or even back in the days of Turing, throw physical switches that were on and off, and it would send the computation through a series of circuits. And the way you would tell it, like, okay, if it's an H, go left, and if it's a T, go right in this, decoding thing. And I'll plug in what it says, and then it'll follow this electronic chain through these series of circuits. And they would create this giant, overwhelmingly large circuit board. And that was their way of programming it, was literally on-off switches, physical switches, right? And then it got smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. And then the big turnover when it became personal, when PCs happened, personal computers, was when they created a fake desktop. You've been dealing with files on your desktop for a long time. They're not really files. They're obviously created by a series of ones and zeros. These are illusions. There's no menus on your laptop. There's no files on there. These are just the way you see the representative files that are just lots of ones and zeros. It's like that scene in The Matrix where Neo finally wakes up to what the world around him looks like, and it's all just cascading green, code everywhere. But he's seeing past the menu. So the matrix in that is a UI. It's a user interface for this giant program. And if you're too lost and you can't see past the menus, and you're like, why won't my garbage empty? I keep clicking on the garbage icon and it won't empty. It's supposed to empty. Like you're buying into the symbology as a reality. And the same, with what we use keyboards, typing in real language most of the time, writing up real letters and all that kind of stuff, using a mouse, which isn't a thing either. It's a made-up phrase, or a trackpad to move the cursor around so you can direct what you want to do inside the environment. And if you use an iPad or something in the newer computers, or your phone, you don't need a mouse. You use your actual finger, because what is a mouse but a virtual fingertip, right? That you can touch that, push that. Like, it's absurd. But you think back on it. But nowadays we got wireless mice, we got rollerball trackpads, all kinds of stuff like that. They even have the Leap, where you can use your hand to just gesture. It never really caught on too much because errant gestures are a problem. You actually want to refine it. But when we get to AI, now it's this situation where you can just talk to it. So I rewatched Runaway last week. I love that movie, by the way. And I don't know if you've seen it. It's Tom Selleck and Cynthia Rhodes and Gene Simmons. Gene Simmons is the villain in it. Yeah.
I'm looking it up because I see so much stuff I don't remember.
Yeah, Michael Crichton wrote it and directed it. It's based on the police department has a runaway squad now that's in charge of rogue robots, when robots go rogue or do something. Now, the robots that they have are very boxy and rudimentary for the most part. They're not humanoid. It's not like iRobot. It's what I like about it is that it's almost too realistic. It's like, okay, they're using the technology of the time. They introduced the idea of a floater in a situation where there's a crime going on, and what is it? It's a drone. It's a 3-camera drone on a single with a single propeller in the center, and it floats into a room and it can turn around and show you the scene. So they send it in before the police go in, so they know what's going on. And this rogue robot shoots it, and that's how they know it's got a gun or whatever, because it found a gun. But they wear scatter suits so that the sensors on the robot can't see them. There are limitations on the robots that don't allow them to do more than anything else. So even when they've been programmed to kill, if they only got a stun capability, they just stun you to death, and it would take forever so you can get away. And they're very boxy. But there's a robot in it, Lois, which is the house robot that Tom Selleck's character has, that feeds his kid when he's not at home. It's basically like a nanny bot. And it's a box, and it looks like the stereo my dad had in the 80s at his apartment, but on wheels. It's just this brick, right? And it talks very sweetly. But the most realistic part of it, and I think people should watch it. It's streaming on a couple of different sites. But there's a point where his partner comes over and is introduced for the first time, and as he's trying to talk to her, it thinks it's talking to it. It thinks he's talking to it. So it's like, should I remember that? No, I was talking to her. I'm sorry. Like it has a hard time determining whether or not, because it can't see your face talking to it. It doesn't take those kind of cues. It loses its focus. And it doesn't know whether you're talking to it or to another person. And it overlaps with his talking in a really natural way. And when you're running AI, or like when you and I have used it online, and it can hear both of our voices, it gets very confused. Or if I talk to you and it can't hear your voice, like it thinks I'm still talking to it, right? There's so many parallels that were, so prescient in this, and speak to the limitations of it, because it still has those limitations. Now, those limitations will be gone in about a year and a half max, because
it's being worked on.
Yep, facial cues and all that kind of stuff. And you can even do it where it will only work if you're looking directly at it, or if you go that other voice is my friend here, and it'll go, oh, okay, now I know that voice, and I won't talk when you're talking to them. I'll assume you're talking to them unless you ask me directly. That it's a second class citizen in terms of conversation, whatever.
Yeah. That kind of drives us to, if you don't mind, so there's like 3 more questions and we're getting kind of the end of my time. So Vincent Owens, who asked, can it lie? We talked about lying and that sort of thing, but there's another thing, and that is it can be wrong.
Yeah.
So if you go to something with this concept that it's the all-knowing truth of the world, because you think it's human and a god, and you type in a question and it gets it wrong, like you might perceive that as a lie, but it's actually just a mistake. And so that's another thing to be cognizant of, that and that's one of the reasons why I really always suggest not to humanize it, to think of it like effectively like a better Google, because that allows you to have that level of skepticism and actually go ask, go do a little more research. And Google's really good when you know exactly what you're looking for. Google's really good at that. But ChatGPT or any of the LLMs, they're better at when you just have this general concept of maybe possible. You can work with it to get more focused, get an answer, and then if you needed to, you could go check on it. You could go verify it. The next one is Rob said, I'm more worried about use cases than power consumption, such as use of AI for denying insurance claims. That's an interesting thing. And it's prescient in the news right now. So one of the things that I've been thinking about, let's say AI just was our Congress, right? Was the judge. It seems a little scary, but if I were to think about the use of AI in dealing with a insurance claim, the way that I would go about using it is I would go and look at at all of the legal portions of the insurance policy. I would push that into the LLM, and then I would probe it to figure out if the policy said it was covered or not. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So
you could actually
insurance claims is there's this human being that lives between the policy and you, and that human being is like the gatekeeper to you getting the money. But legally, that's not actually true. What if it says
you have a copy of your
interpretation?
Right, and you have a copy of your policy when you sign up for insurance, whether it's like terms of service. You're probably not going to look through it, but you definitely have it or have access to it, or you can get it from their website. So one of the things I've been wanting to do, and it's being in the Screen Actors Guild, is that when you're in a union, there are a lot of benefits to being in a union, not just being union jobs and stuff, but you not only there's insurance, you get deals on other stuff too. They negotiate with businesses so that you can get 15% off, sailing stuff, like buying stuff, clothing, like in SAG, you can even, estheticians and that kind of stuff, because everybody's getting, yes. Okay. That all those things that I think
the sun is moving.
Yes. That I think, I've been wanting to present the idea that SAG needs an AI, like a SAG AI, and everybody's against it there because they think they're anti-AI because of the artistic aspect of it. But on a material level, on a website level like that, having a SAG, like the little happy face and the sad face, like, hey, got a problem? Talk to the sad face. You want to know how we can help you? Talk to the happy mask, of the 2 actor masks, and just have one literally that can speak, and then you can just discuss with it. You go, hey, I've been in SAG for 3 months now. Is there anything you can do to help me get an agent? Are there gatherings in my area of the union? What does it take for me to join the board? And you could discuss it like a human being, in the same way that in the old days you might call the office, back when it was a smaller organization, talk to a real person, but now it's too big and you can never reach somebody at that level. So why not create an AI that is trained on everything the union can do, its entire contracts, all of the signatories. You go, hey, I just got offered this job and I don't know if they're SAG compliant or whatever. Can you just tell me real quick, as opposed to having to look it up through a series of things? And then you just know. And the same thing is true of like, how much further do I have to go before I qualify for my insurance? What can I do in the interim if my insurance, if I lose my insurance and I can get it temporarily until my next show starts or whatever? What's that, being able to discuss all that stuff, which you would have to look through the manual or finally get somebody on the phone who might or might not be interested in walking you through all of it, having this AI that's trained on every detail of this organization would be incredibly valuable to every member on a personal level. It would make the experience of being in SAG so much more personal. And I'm sure it's true of the UAW. I'm sure it's true of IATSE. I'm sure it's true of, any healthcare plan that you're on. If there was an AI, even, and again, you can trust their AI or maybe not. Maybe you just take whatever that is and go to Gemini, since they're worried about ChatGPT. Go to Gemini, which is the Google one, or you go to Copilot and go, here's a PDF of my insurance plan. They sent me an email of this and I downloaded it. What does this cover and what doesn't it cover? Real quick, what am I missing here? And what are my options as far as like, do I pay $20 more a month and it will cover a bunch of this stuff and I won't get bit in the ass in the back end? Are they hiding something in this? Is there anything sketchy in this as a contract that stands out to you? And then you'll know, and you'll go, you know what? I'm going to leave you guys and go to another insurance company because this bugs me, and I'm going to let everybody know unless you fix this. Like that could be that you would need a team of lawyers to comb through this stuff in the old days, and now you could do it by yourself.
Yes, and in the chat, a number of people talked about how there must have been a story, I haven't seen it, about how AI was used to deny claims. Like everything that we talk about, think about everything in both directions.
Yeah.
So if a company is using AI to deny claims, you can use AI to fight back, if that's the right term, to argue your position. Right.
That's right.
There's one more. I got about 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Will we have care robots to take care of older people anytime soon? So this moves us into robot land, which is Hal's favorite subject.
That's right.
Yes, absolutely. We are going to have care robots. That is the absolute direction that
most humanoid
making robots wants, because it's a humongous market.
Oh my God! And the humanoid robots, especially the robot dogs and the robot humans, are going to be primarily for caretaking, because the stuff that goes into like a mine and finds people who are trapped or whatever isn't going to look like a dog or a person. It's going to be a rover with wheels or treads or something like that, and is a single-use robot. But anything that looks even remotely like the ones that we're seeing that walk around and do stuff, that interact with human beings, those are going to be the ones that are going to be taking care of people. South Korea had with all their current issues, had a robot bill of rights they put into place, I want to say in the 90s, if not the early 2000s, because they knew this was coming and this was the direction, because they have an aging population. Same with Japan. They know that they're heading towards this as fast as they can, because their societies got old and they're racially homogenous, so they're not replacing the kids as fast. So they need somebody to take care of these old people, and they're just going to have to construct them. I know you're running out of time, and I'm gonna we'll end the show at the half-hour point, so you can bug out and I can go get some sleep, because I literally was on a red eye last night. Jackson, what's your buddy? Jackson, Camille. Camille, do you want to come up? Hold on. Let me see if. Hold on. I want to see if Jackson can come here.
Jackson, come here.
Jackson, come here, buddy. Come here, buddy. Come here. Come on. Where you going? Where you running around? Come here. It's your boy. Can you come here? Nope. You don't want to get up?
You need a Jackson cam.
He doesn't want to. Yeah, I need a Jackson cam. That's right. He's like, Jackson, what's going on? What's it doing? There he is. Oh, you tell him. Tell him what's up, Jackson. There he is. Hold on. You see his tail wagging. All right. I know. Okay.
Jackson,
Yes, you're very popular. You're beloved. Okay. Now I'm back. Thank you.
I'm trying to
That-
keep up with the chat.
I understand.
I mean, there's a lot of other things that
Sure.
were asked.
Yes,
but,
there's a lot of stuff in there.
Trying to stay on subject as well.
So there's a couple of things real quick I want to address too before we head out
Okay.
that I think are kind of crucial. And let's see, where is it? Guests and news. Where is it? There we go. Boink. Here we go. This. Okay. So, whoops. I have to pop you in there. Hold on. And there he is. Trump picked this guy David Sachs, who was on that like business podcast that he was on, that to be his crypto and AI czar. Now, I said the next president, I was hoping it would be Harris, but the next president would have an AI czar. I said this. Now, they made it a crypto and AI czar because that's what they really care about. And he doesn't know jack about AI, but he's a big
It's the
crypto
same
dude.
thing, probably.
Yeah, he has no idea. Yeah, like, but so I wanted to show a couple of things. One of them was, let's see this. Where is it? Oh yeah. So this is a company called Bolt. Bolt.new. This is indicative of a bunch of programs that are or sites that are out. There's like 4 or 5 of them. Cursor's one. Bolt is another one where you can not just make, do a little bit of coding on your own, but make entire stacked applications just by explaining them. And it is nuts. I'm going to play around with this and make something for next time. I'm just letting people know. And basically the free version, just warning people ahead of time, right? And then
Just so everybody knows, you should have a goal of what to make before you start.
well, let me. Okay, so there's another site called Pickle. Okay, it's called Pickle, which is this is join meetings online with a clone. So this is a lady who's on. She's got her baby in her hand, and she's doing all this. This lady's jogging, and they're in meetings. This guy's in his crappy little dorm room, I guess. But and this guy's in Africa, I guess. Like in the middle of the woods. It's hard to say.
That's a really good avatar, though. That's not a clone.
Well, the thing is yeah, these are live lip synced avatars, though.
Yes.
And so this is on the left is what you see on the call, and on the right is where the guy actually is.
Yeah.
And the guy on the left, it looks like a scene out of Mindhunter. Like it looks like a David Fincher camera angle. Like you can pick whatever this is like, but it is very telling that this is a thing. Like, and never mind the fraud possibilities in and of themselves in this situation, but like as far as like, this could have saved Jeffrey Toobin's career. I'm just saying.
unless it knew him so well that it did it
Right,
too.
recreated it. Right, yeah, right. Why is my avatar buck naked and covered in baby oil?
Right?
Yeah. So the other one is NVIDIA is known for its super chips, right? That's why NVIDIA they're headed towards being whatever, a $3 trillion company or something ridiculous like that. Amazon has now announced that they are coming for the crown, or at least competing, which all that means is that the availability of broader AI chips is going to start climbing by volume, which means the knockoff ones, again, the ones that end up in your phone, are going to be ridiculously extraordinary because the top of the top of the top of the top of the top will be used to train these LLMs. And then that seeking of that greatness in the quality of the lithography machines and making these things will make the cast-off lower-level chips just mind-blowingly fast. There's one of the reasons why these chips look like mirrors is that's how densely packed they are with like electrodes or whatever. Like there are billions and billions and billions. Yeah, switches. It's
like
nuts.
Little bitty switches.
Little bitty switches. Like so many of them that it makes them like mirrored, basically.
They're just tiny little on-off switches. That's all they are.
Okay. The other thing is, and this is a cautionary tale, and then I'll let you go because you got to go, is don't fall in love with anybody you meet online.
There you go.
Because catfishing just became, like, you're worried about a Terminator humanoid it's the Terminator catfish that you got to worry about. This like,
For sure.
she really loves me. All she needs is a credit card. She's gonna come and see me, right? They make these people, and they will chat online. You can pick their eye color to design them. They are trained models on these individual characters, and then you can talk to them. I don't know why this guy isn't working. I just want to move up. But there are a myriad of these, and they sell access to them, and people pay about $1,000 to make these things, and then they make money off of them as, online fake influencers. Now, we had a problem before where influencers were already fake. They were already, renting cars and houses and taking pictures of themselves in these areas. Now those people don't even exist. You don't even need to fake the car anymore. All of it's fake. All of it.
Yes.
Yeah. And so, and again, just the potential for catfishing goes through the roof in these situations. But at the very least, look forward to this being your news anchor of the future on a bunch of these sites too, because that's what they're going to do.
They're already there. Like, they're pretty darn good now. I don't know that we shared it on the stream, but I was showing you effectively a daily news thing that it's basically an avatar that runs, and it's AI generated. I mean, the thing that we're trying to talk about these things in bigger general terms to try to help people
demystify
understand
them.
that it's coming.
Right.
Don't get there's some amazing things it can do, but it's doing it because it creates possibilities that weren't possible before.
Right. And people take advantage of that.
The direction of how you accomplish things.
That's right.
And that's the real amazing thing about it. So you can't use today's paradigms as a way to think about what those are going to become, because everything is different. We've talked about games. One of the most amazing things I see coming is games are going to stop being pre-built.
Right.
And they're going to be done on the fly by an AI generator, because it'll the way that it'll happen is once AI can generate images at the same rate as your video card can generate, or your TV, which is about 30 to 60 frames a second, depending on what you're watching. Once it can do that, you don't need any of the power of you don't need to pre-make a game anymore. You just need to tell it what to make.
Yeah.
Or
tell it the story that you want it to tell in even the broadest terms. This is how the game starts. This is where the optional stuff happens. These are the mini missions in between. But the overall goal is to have this person learn the story of this adventure of this character as they seek this particular goal. And they either succeed or fail based on their ability to do these certain things. And then off it goes. And it can create this broad, lifelike world. And then within the confines of that, they have to achieve certain goals or avoid certain pitfalls to win the game in a way that you've established. And they can choose to make it easier and more understand, hold me by the hand. So in the new Call of Duty, there's a zombie game in it that they always put in. And they have now a thing in it which is standard or guided. And the standard version is you're just running around opening doors trying to figure out where you can go. And you've got a mini map where you can see just past the edge of where you are. So you can kind of maybe find areas you need to go to. And occasionally doors will have a sign on them or a star around them on the map that says you should probably, this is a door you can buy your way through or go through. Whereas other doors are just fake or solid and you can't do anything with them. And so you just run around kind of knocking on stuff and Duke Nukem trying to, where is it? Remember in the day when you try to find the wall holes that had ammo in them and stuff back in the day? Well, then there's the guided one where there's this AI all the time that's there that goes, that comes in as a calm sound of a character that goes, I don't know if you've checked over there, but you might want to look down the hallway and watch out for, we've heard reports of yada, yada, right? And that it directs you that way. And so you can, and it's specific to you. It's an AI generated thing. There's also on some of the weapons, there's an AI character you can attach to the gun that talks to you. And so it has like a bunch of phrases, interacts with how you play, and it will talk to you like, and kind of like cheer you on or tell you to watch out or look out behind you, that kind of thing. And you can turn around because it looks that way. And that's all new to this entire thing. And again, it takes this much computing power compared to the rest of the program.
Yeah. And that's like when you get scared about it, realize that you started this thing off talking about how you gave an iPhone to your grandparent.
Yeah.
And they figured it out. And that's where the user experience comes in. And so no more jobs for game designers, illustrators, animators, characters. So
no,
it's not true.
Nope.
These are effectively replacing the current way you produce concept art, let's call it.
Yeah.
It's a way to change. If you hand draw and then you render it on paper versus rendering it in Photoshop or SketchUp or something like that.
Right.
And then you animate it in Studio Max or Maya or Blender or something like that. You have a pipeline for how you have an idea in your head and you produce something that somebody else can see because you have to explain to them the idea.
Right.
It's that pipeline that's changing. It's not your idea for what the character is.
That's right.
So a lot of designers that I talk to, they call themselves, they're starting to like articulate their job as a curator as opposed to an artist. So they say that they're still artists, but they say it that way to help their customer understand that what they're really selling them is they don't want their customer to say, oh, we'll just go to ChatGPT or we'll just go to Midjourney. Why do we need the designer?
Right.
Well, you still need the designer it's
got to all fit together or it's a mess. Right.
You need to see the vision. You need to know how it's structured and all those things. And if you don't get that right, it's not going to be good. And that's what a professional does, is they effectively curate the choices. They guide the choices.
And the audience in a lot of ways is going to, they'll like somebody's work and they'll want it just as much as anyone else. And even if that person is just like created like H.R. Geiger, like if you take all of his designs and you're like, we can make a game based on his design concepts, the next H.R. Geiger who's designing stuff that's original could go, these are my characters and I've been able to take my sketches and my drawings and turn them into 3D models, and then I will license them out myself to something else instead of somebody just sees what I did and lifts it or whatever, that they are specifically theirs.
The next Geiger doesn't need a filmmaker to go put their stuff into Alien. Instead, they might be able to make the film themselves and have more creative control over it. That's kind of how to think about this thing. All right, I got to go.
I know, you got to go. Thank you so much for being here. Rob Glenn, Root Design, Chicago. Love you, brother. Have fun, and we will talk again very soon. And I will say a pleasant goodbye to the chat room as well in a moment. So cheers. See you later,
chat.
brother.
Thanks, everybody, and love you too, brother.
Okay, cheers. There he goes. Oops, I didn't make a camera for myself. So I should probably put myself in here because it's rude otherwise. Boink, there I am. And I'm going to go check into my hotel and try and get some sleep because I left. My plane was delayed almost 3 hours last night. And so I was supposed to get in at 4:30 a.m. this morning, and I got in at 6 and change, and still haven't checked into my hotel yet. So, it's a lot. It's a lot. So anyways, I will see you guys later on this afternoon. Won't be at the regular time because I'm on East Coast time, and I've still got to check in with the people from this Kiss Cancer Goodbye charity event that I'm doing. And so I will have an update at some point. I'll let Andrea know as well, and I'll figure it out. But I hope, what I want to stress to everybody is that people aren't going to lose their jobs in this country, which I think is the key. one of the things Rob and I have been talking about too, and I think this is to stress, and the question about, there go designers and illustrators. Think of how many like artists in the United States that created this like a scene or something like that, and then ultimately to make it happen, they had to farm it out to an ocean of whoops. Why did I freeze? There you go. They had to farm it out to an ocean of like South Korean digital artists just to get it done, or a Chinese factory that does the like animation factory. Otherwise, it would never happen. Right? Now you don't have to do that anymore. Now the artists themselves can come up with this stuff and start building on it. They just don't need the Scriveners are out of business. And this happened when the printing press happened. It used to be if you wanted a copy of the Bible, you had to find somebody who had written another copy of it. And then, or any book. And they had Scriveners, people whose job it was to copy books by hand. Then we got a printing press and books became more available. And nobody complains about the fact that only rich people can afford a Scrivener to copy their books for them. We're all glad we can have access to all the books that we want. And then you have scribed and you have digital versions of stuff where you don't even have to print one. You can just have a digital copy of it, right? No one would argue that that's a bad thing, I don't think. Yeah? That will not happen again. Agreed, Kathy, but you'll be able to design something whole cloth that will have a direct revenue stream, perhaps. And also just working for a year on that one. I mean, it's going to change in the same way that, Scriveners went out of business. This is a change. But it's democratizing the ability for everybody to make the content themselves. And personal touches will become far more important. So, this is, again, part of this is inevitable. And so to adapt to this, understood, Kath. Part of this is not a matter of choice. It's a matter of how you adapt to it, not that you adapt to it. In the same way that Scriveners and I guess hamburger flippers had to change their job when fast food became more material, when they started microwaving all the food or using an air fryer at Starbucks. My computer is cooking, so I will let you guys go. This is literally at the end of its ability. It's starting to freeze frame, which is what happens when it gets hot. So I will see you guys later on this afternoon. I'll let you guys know when I can get back online. Take care of yourselves and take care of somebody else. And, look, you can trust me. I'm named after a computer. It's going to be all right.